Alrighty. So today we get to work with PAM. PAM is awesome. PAM is just amazing. So PAM is the authentication module for Linux, right?
Okay.
The only problem is that the Linux we have has got no reason to use any kind of crypto or authentication other than the interactive login that we use, student whatever, or root whatever. So one of the things I want you guys to go ahead and do today is apt-get install SSH. So SSH is just like Telnet, but it uses crypto keys. And that means we have to build our own crypto keys today. So just go ahead and say yeah, let it do its thing. It will go ahead and turn on the firewall, do all the other stuff that it needs to do. And once it's installed, it should have built a new directory for you. Should have built a new directory called .ssh when it's all installed. It's going to be right here in the root. Oops, if I typed the wrong thing. So, if you're anything like me, then you should see another directory that's called authorized keys.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
Really? No apt get install SSH?
SSH started, but
well, no.
SSH.
When you CD into root, there's no SSH.
Yeah.
Maybe look at
Oh, you mean .ssh?
Right.
it. Yes, dot SSH is not there.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Alright.
But you guys do have, everyone did apt-get install SSH, okay?
Yes.
Alright. Yep. Alright, so depending on who you're logged in as, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to generate what's called a key file. I've already generated two, but we're going to walk through exactly how to do this. And you basically have two key files here. So we have one that's called dantest, right? And this is your private key. So this is the key that is half of your key pair, right? You have a public and private key. So your private key is a really important one. This is the one you don't want to get lost, right? If you lose this one, everything that has to do with PAM goes out the window. Make sense?
For this key or just period?
No, this key in specific is your private key. If you lose this key, you're screwed.
Okay.
All right. Then you have another one that's called pub. This is your public key. This is the one that you would hand out to everybody and their monkey. So it's sort of like business cards. You hand out, here's my public key. Please be my friend. And then PAM will go, okay, we'll be friends. Make sense?
That's how people access.
This is how people access you. So you have you that accesses you through your private key. And then other people can access you through your public key. So everybody remember the classic Alice and Bob email signing thread, right? Where you have Alice has a public key and Bob signs it with Alice's public key and private key pair and so on and back and forth. It's the same kind of concept here. All right? Exactly the same thing that you would do just with email. It's the same thing that you're doing if you're in 210 when you took the PEM key, which is a combination key of your public and private, and then split it out using PuttyGen to create your private key. So to create your key, and you have to pardon me, I actually have to look at a book for this. SSH minus sign keygen minus T, and we want an RSA key. There's two different kinds of keys that you can do here. You can do a RSA key, which is pretty much so the universal, or you can do a DSA key. All right. Most everybody will write an RSA key. If you want to be different and flamboyant, write a DSA key. But in this case, I'm going to teach you how to do an RSA key. So it's going to come up. So type in SSH keygen minus T RSA. And then hit enter. And what it will do is enter file to which to save the key. And it's going to drop it off in root SSH ID RSA. Right? If you just leave it blank, it will drop it off in your root home folder. That's what that root.ssh ID RSA means. All right. Created directory root.ssh. Enter passphrase empty for no passphrase. Same passphrase. Your identification has been saved in root.ssh ID RSA. All right, and then ID RSA.pub.
Well, now we should have.
Now you have dot SSH.
Mm-hmm. Nope, not yet. Wow, where did it save it? This is. All right. So in your root directory, I'm sorry, I did this as root. So you see a .ssh file, and I want you to pay really. Let me clear this because I really want you guys to see this. This is kind of the important part. Notice the permissions on the .ssh. Right? It's read, write, execute only for root. So its permissions are 600. Which is really kind of an important part, especially if you're going to use this for backups. So in 2.16, you're going to do this exact same thing, but we're going to tie it to a script so you can do keyless entry and back up all your systems across the board. And then you have your private public key. Notice that your private key is read write only by root, but your public key is readable by everybody and their monkey. Right, and that's the nature of the key pairs, right? Your private key is just for you. If you lose your private key, it's worse than losing your car keys. It's worse than having all your stuff chucked out of the apartment and finding it on the lawn when you come home from school. Right? So you really want to take good care of your private key. Your public key is a little bit looser. All right? But that's used for countersigning and all the rest of it. So you can share your public key out. Does that kind of make sense on how all this stuff works? Right? So we have SSH running. We have our RSA key going. Now comes for the long, oh my god, pain in the butt thing that we're going to do next. So we want to type in cat $$home .ssh ID RSA.pub, and we want to tie this to an account, right? So that's our goal, is to tie this to an account. So we want to pipe this to SSH, and let's do student at localhost, because this is my computer, student at localhost / cat student .ssh authorized keys. So this whole command is really kind of a pain in the butt. All right, no arguments on this one. And what I'll do is I'll copy all these off and put them into the shell for you, so you've actually got them and you can practice this at home. So basically what it's saying is I want you to cat everything that's in home SSH and bring up the ID RSA pub keyring. I want my public key for this. You could also specify the private key if you want a little bit more security. So if you're doing like Amazon in 2.10, we're only using our private keys. Our public key, we could chuck that around and no one's going to care. Then we want to pipe that to SSH user student at localhost. So if this was a real computer on a real network, we could say student at Joe Bob's drive-in, or / so we want to star cat this thing over and kind of add it to the authorized keys here on the student computer. Does it make sense? And then if I type this right with no typos, it will say here's what we got. It should go through okay. But there's always this whole typo thing, right? So when you get student.ssh authorized keys, no such file or directory, right?
Yeah,
What did I type in wrong? So it's just .ssh. I don't have an authorized key file. All right. So that's one thing I need to change. So oops. localhost cat student.sh. Cat root. And cat home. I could probably just take that out. And it's mostly because of where I'm at. Because I'm actually in there right now. So we can take that out. Bash student.sh. So it's pointing off to student. So I haven't moved my key over. So there's no student.ssh file. So again, it's kind of working through this thing, but this is one way of getting your keys put in the right spot. And that's basically how you set up SSH to work with a particular account, so you don't have to use username and password. Now the thing that should make this even more interesting is if you go into var log, you should now start seeing your auth log here. And it will tell you that you've gone ahead and made a new user, set and changed password, and that the whole system is now listening on port 22. But this is how people can sneak in too without seeing anything, right? Without actually having used passwords. So if you go and you see in your box, right, and you go into your authorized key file and you see keys in there that you don't know, then that means someone has injected their own key into your key path. And they can now passwordlessly log in as anybody that they want to log in as. Usually they just come screaming in as root. So it's a good idea to go through and back up your authorized key and see if there's anything hokey in there. Alright? Does it kind of make sense? So SSH, install it, create a key, and then tie it to a user. So pretty straightforward, kind of, sort of, maybe. Happy Friday. Oh my God, it's early. Huh? This is the reason why you came in, was to learn how to use PAM, right? Honestly, and this is that whole kind of process from it, right? Was learn how to make a key. So the other thing you want to check too, right? Because we're still moving on here. Is that if you go into Etsy, you're going to see a file here named pam.conf. So this is the configuration file for actually setting up PAM to run as service modules. You can set PAM up to authenticate SSH, SFTP, HTTPS. You can do a lot of things with this to specifically target a specific service to authenticate either a crypto key, which will make passwords invalid, right? You don't need to worry about passwords if everyone has to have that crypto key. This is the only way you're getting in. They can sit there and brute force passwords all day long, and they can't get in without having to have the crypto key, right? The only problem is going to be is if they get into the computer and steal your crypto, and then they can be you. So that can cause problems, right? But basically, most programs use the SEPAMD directory to set up their PAM service modules. Right? This file is only used, but basically how it breaks out is what service, what module, what control, and then the path that goes along with it, right? So if we go into PAMD, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that it uses to make things work. And our brand new program of SSHD is in here, right? But you'll also see how it ties into password and into cron and into login, creating new users. Everything you do on this box has to be authenticated and validated by PAM first. If PAM don't like it, it don't happen, right? And then you'll see that in your auth log. But the one thing to get that auth log is you actually have to turn on SSH to get that thing to go, right? So if you go sudo, if you go su, if you do any of these other things that we would normally do, it all has to be authenticated by PAM. And what it does is we open up each of the services that's created. So let's open up our new SSH program, right? Read the environment variables from the environment. First thing that it does. So auth required. So anything that uses SSH has to be auth required. Standard Linux and authentication. It points off to common auth, right? Disallow non-root logins when no login exists. If you change this, then that means that anyone that has the shell to log can actually then go in and log in through that shell, right? If this is turned on, right? Account required PAM no login.so. So if you change this out, someone can just go in and log in through the Apache account and have a shell instead, right? And you can change all your security accesses here, and this is a real common file for people to want to go into when they're going through and they're hacking your box. Because basically what I do is I turn off security on your box, but no one thinks of looking at the PAM configuration file. All right. So if you need to set up a complex access limits that are hard to express in SSH, you can actually go ahead and do this through the account required PAM access.so. You can include a common account. You can include common sessions, so you can actually do session turn on and turn off to require crypto, to require all that authentication to go through. Right. So PAM basically helps set up line by line exactly what can be done within the purview of that specific service, right? And that makes a huge difference when you can actually go and configure each service to do something a little bit different depending on what you've got. If you set up cron also has to have a username and password to actually run. So when you set it up and you say, okay, I want to do this cron, I want to pull this cycle every 5 minutes, you're actually doing that and giving it the ability to use root. You're telling it to be root for the purposes of running this particular polling cycle. You can change that off here. One of the things that I find that is going to be the most destructive for people is this whole include common session non-interactive. All right, does everybody know what an interactive session is and a non-interactive session is? Okay, an interactive An interactive session is when I have to username and log into a box. I'm interacting with that TTY. That's considered an interactive session. All right. If it's a non-interactive session, then I'm basically sending a key over and saying, here you go, this is my RSA key. Here's my username. Boom. And here's the rest of it. It won't let you log in from the terminal unless you actually have that key. So a non-interactive login is when you're using the crypto certificate you just wrote. An interactive login is when you're using username and password. So kind of makes sense? So you could literally go into any virtual system and make it so that they either have to present a certificate, or if it's set to present a certificate, you can turn it over and change it to an interactive login if you're tired of dealing with certificates. Right? But this is one of the things that people will do to muck about with systems, is change it so that both are available, right? And that's kind of invalidates the security model, because you want an either or. You either want interactive username password or you want username certificate. Kind of makes sense? Maybe, kind of, sort of.
So it didn't look like either one of those was commented out. It said both of them had a hat.
Yeah. No, and I've got this thing set up for both interactive and certificate right now. All right. For the shadow and the new user service, remember everybody, sorry, it's still way too early and I've only had 1 cup of coffee. Include common password. This is where you can set up so that you can tie into your password policy. If you need complex passwords and all the rest of it, you can actually make a new password policy and put it in here. Right? So password is generally not a good password to have if you want to set some kind of policy up in your Unix box for that. So kind of makes sense? All right. Everybody know what sudoers is? All right, so it's in your Etsy directory. This file can be edited. I mean, you can do anything you want to do with it, right? But basically how this breaks apart is these are the people that can get to root. User privileges, root, all. Anyone on this box can gain root privileges. If you want to minimize this out, you can actually only say that only specific people can sudo to root, right? And then all this stuff will be logged in your auth log if someone tries to sudo su, and they're not authorized. right? So you can either do it by host, by user, or by command alias. So if you only want certain users to be able to go through and get into the Etsy directory and type things that are in the Etsy directory, like get to all the configuration files, you can actually make it so that command alias specification of more on configuration files is only limited to a certain amount of people, right? So allow members of this group to execute any command. Sudo all means that anyone that's on this box can automatically go and become root on it, right? So if you want to lock this down so that only admin can get there, or only the administrators can get to root, this is where you're going to change that file to make that happen.
And how would you change that?
Oh. sudoers.d, cd into that. The README file that should be in there will walk you through all the different things that you need to do to make this thing actually happen. But the cool part is that you really can lock this down, right? So if someone is trying to break into your box, then you can really lock down who can become root and do evil things. Right? It does. So if you have all of your administrators needing to have the certificate to log in, right? Anyone who's going to be root has to log in with a certificate, and you make it only so that Dan, Avian, and Josh are the only ones that can do anything administrative on the group. Then I have to present that certificate a second time, and that's where it's going to go read the authorized keys. The only problem is if I sneak in through something that drops me into memory and I'm root or shell during that time, if I can add my own keys, then I kind of bypass it, but it makes it much harder for me. And most hackers will just go, oh, that's too hard, and walk away. Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So any questions on PAM? Do we love PAM? Is PAM awesome? Does PAM make everyone's day? Yep.
One quick question.
Shoot.
The slash the file you had at home student at localhost. Did you ever do that go?
No, I've got to go. I will get it. I had it up earlier, but then
I didn't know if there was something. Yes, that can happen.
Yeah, no, I actually had it up and running earlier. Because I actually ran through this before I started this thing this morning. I just have to remember where I actually dropped it in history. Yeah. No, so I'll just pull it out of my history and bring it up. But you can also copy that key over to the authorized keys.
Okay. Just make the directory copy.
Yeah. So where am I? So if I go... You just want to make sure the permissions are the same. So you can go copy ID RSA over to .ssh. And same thing. There's an easier way to do it. Copy it over. I mean, honestly, right?
Sure.
Now, the problem comes in if you do copy it over, which is also perfectly valid and legitimate, right? What's wrong with the file permissions on that? Should be 600. All right. If you do this, it's really easy to overwrite other people's keys. So what you want to do, if I had your key, say copied my key over, you handed me yours, I would append your key to the bottom of this file.
Okay, so you have more into it, and then
You have to edit it, nano it, and then append the key. If you just take and copy your key over, you'll actually blow out everybody else's keys on the box, which is really, really funny when you're in Amazon land. So
everyone who's on the box needs keys. You're not talking about public keys for someone else.
no,
Everyone's private.
everyone's private key. So if this file, the ID RSA file's got like 10 keys in it, and you just go and you copy your key over, it will do that. and it will basically take your file and then replace it with the file you've already modified. So you got to make sure you nano it first, because this is really, really, really funny when you're in Amazon land and you cut your own key and you copy it over to authorized keys. You wipe out all the Amazon keys that were designed around that specific image that you brought up, so ain't no one getting in. And trust me, I've seen that. It's actually really kind of funny.
For you who didn't do it.
Well, I have backups. I'm paranoid. In 2.16, when we're doing this, I get really paranoid, so I make backups of everything before we go and cut our own keys. Because again, you do this exact same thing in 2.16.
So now, what does this look like when you're logging in? So is this only when you're SSHing?
This will only be when you're SSH in PuTTY.
Okay.
And your private key is where you put in auth keys, just like you do in 2.10.
Okay. So it's nothing. We won't necessarily see that unless we want SSH keys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But this is just a really sweet way of setting up crypto,
Okay.
and then having that auth log so you can actually see if people are scanning or have failed logins and all the rest of it, and kind of in its own little pocket.
And where do you? I don't know how to put the auth log.
The auth log is underneath var log, and the auth log.
Okay.
All right, but this is a neat way of tracking who's logging in and who's logging out. And it really makes it a little bit more secure in terms of dealing with people that can just go brute force accounts. So, yeah, so in a virtualized environment that's public facing, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Azure, whether it's Google, things like this really cut down on the damage that drive-bys can do, because if you don't have the key, you ain't getting in. Right, and you see that perpetual scanning going on in all three of the cloud environments right now. And it's really kind of interesting because it's a waste of time unless someone made your Amazon account an interactive login account.
And so that's really what the scanning is for.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the people who didn't.
Finding the people that are stupid. And yeah, basically. But that's basically how this whole thing works.
Cool.
So kind of makes sense?
Is there a way for us to test this or like that?
Yeah.
SSH into
Yeah.
Avian's box?
Yeah. If Avian's got your key, if Avian's got your private key
Okay.
in his authorized key file, then yes, you can SSH using PuTTY to go in, no problem. If he doesn't, then no. But you also already have an interactive login account on Avian's box, so you could log in as student password or as root blah blah blah, depending on what he set up, and still use SSH to encrypt the tunnel. It all depends on if you want to do it with password or without password, interactive or non-interactive logins.
So this is all non-interactive.
This would make it so.
Bypass the
Yep. So this would make it a non-interactive, so that I have to have the key to get in the door.
Would it bypass if you didn't have a password?
Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, no, if you guys want to go string everything together, put on a USB stick the private key, just remember to nano and append the key rather than cutting the key over. Because if you set this thing up and do it wrong, you'll overwrite your own key, and then you got to start all over again from scratch, because that really literally locks the box. It becomes a lump of iron, it becomes a boat anchor, it becomes a door stop.
No, that's only for SSH though.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so we would just be able to not get in with SSH
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Yep. Yep, and that's the reason why I want you guys to keep interactive login for right now. Because if you do boo-boo, there's a way to recover.
Yeah.
And blow-ups will happen on this one. Does it kind of make sense? All right, so if you guys want to go share key pairs, that's cool. I don't recommend you share key pairs via email, and the reason for that is because every single email system I've ever seen alters the private key so that it's non-functional. I don't know why, but if you try to email a private key to someone, the key gets corrupted. So you're going to want to do this via USB stick. Does it make sense? Everybody remembers how to mount? Anybody not remember how to mount? Right? So if you just type in mount, you can actually see all the mounts that are already on your box. You can see where it's all connected to, like DevS, your hard drive, and all the rest of it. Right? So So you can kind of see what you've got there. If you go into MNT, if you plug in your USB stick should show up underneath MNT automatically. If we did the install right, it will show up automatically, but it will be underneath the MNT directory. All right. If it's not, you're going to want to go ahead and do mount dev USB 0 probably on root.
You can find it immediately when you plug it in though.
Yeah.
It'll come up.
It should be in mount.
Your SDV one.
Yeah. So it should be dev, and when you plug it in, it's probably going to be USB 0, honestly, or USB 1, depending on how your computer feels today about the numbering convention. Because computers all start off with what number? Big fat 0. Make sense? Any questions?
No.
You guys sure you're not disappointed you came in to meet Pam today?
VR doesn't matter.
Well, yeah. If it does, I'm probably going to give someone money to go up to Krispy Kreme Donuts and make you guys all a little bit happier. All right, so we good?
No.
Why not?
Those Krispy Kreme donuts.
I must have donuts. Actually, is there even a Krispy Kreme in here? Around here?
Not around.
I think the closest one is Tacoma.
Yeah. I know there's one that's like right on my swing by. Come in down here on First Avenue, near the stadium. Yeah. Does this mean I have to swing by and grab donuts on Monday? How many people need me to bring by donuts on Monday because I let you down today?
Yeah.
All right.
Not?
Now, are we 1 donut or 2 donut people? 2 donut people? Okay. So there's 25. So there's 25. So there's at least 3 dozen donuts I have to buy. I'm like, who's bringing the coffee? You can't have Krispy Kreme without coffee.
The store across the hall.
I'll bring black coffee. You know, one of the buckets.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So Monday, I will make this up to you. Krispy Kreme, 3 dozen donuts.
And I'll bring coffee.
Now what I'll do is I'll just pick up 1 box of glazed donuts and then 2 of whatever they decide to throw into a box. Or do you guys like just the glazed donuts, or do you guys want
That's all the Krispy Kreme is, yes, the glazed donuts.
All right.
That is Krispy Kreme. I'm just saying.
No, it's an old fashioned.
Okay. But I mean, I'll show you.
All right. No, you're doing good. You're doing fine. But I think what we're going to end up with, here is besides the fact that I'm actually recording what constitutes a donut for us while showing Linux on the screen. Yeah.
That's right. You can't back out of it. It's on.
I can't back out of it. It is actually on. Donut. All right.